I'm Eliza, and this is the story of how my world unraveled and how I stitched it back together, thread by bitter thread, until I held the needle. It's not a pretty tale, but it's mine, and I'll tell it as I lived it, raw, jagged, and unapologetic. My sister Vespera stole the wedding I'd spent years dreaming of, the one I'd poured my heart into planning. So I took something of hers from her dream husband, Thane. But let me start at the beginning. Because revenge, like a good wine, takes time to ferment. I was always the planner, the one with the vision. Growing up in our small coastal town of Maris Cove, I'd sit on the cliffs with my sketchbook, drawing gowns that flowed like the waves below, imagining a wedding that would be the talk of the town for years. White roses, a cliffside altar, fairy lights twinkling under a twilight sky. It was my masterpiece. Vespera, 2 years younger, was the opposite. Wild, impulsive, the kind of beauty that made people forget their own name. She'd laugh at my sketches, call them cute, and run off to chase boys or storms. I didn't mind. I loved her, even if she never saw the world the way I did. By the time I was 28, I was engaged to Gideon, a quiet man with kind eyes and a steady job at the lighthouse. He wasn't perfect, but he was mine, and he believed in my dream. We spent nights at my kitchen table, budgeting for the venue, the caterer, the string quartet. I showed him my sketches, and he'd smile, saying, "Eliza, it's going to be magic." Vespera, meanwhile, was dating Thane, a charismatic architect who'd moved to Maris Cove to design eco-friendly beach houses. He was the kind of man who could charm a room silent, with sharp cheekbones and a laugh that felt like sunlight. Vespera was smitten, and I was happy for her, until everything changed. It started with small things. Vespera began showing up at my planning sessions, offering opinions I hadn't asked for. "Why white roses? Lilies are bolder," she'd say, twirling her hair. Or, "That cliffside spot's too windy, Eliza. You'll look like a drowned seagull." I brushed it off. She was just Vespera, always needing to be the center of attention. But then Gideon started acting strange. He'd cancel plans, citing work, or seemed distracted when we talked. I thought it was pre-wedding jitters until the day I found Vespera's scarf in his car, a crimson silk thing that screamed at her. I confronted her at her apartment, my hands shaking as I held up the scarf. "Explain this," I demanded. She just smirked, leaning against the doorframe. "Oh, Eliza, don't be dramatic. We were just talking about wedding stuff. Gideon's helping me plan a surprise for you." Her eyes glittered with something I couldn't name. Malice, maybe? Or triumph. I wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at me like damp rock. The truth hit 3 weeks before my wedding. I'd gone to the venue to confirm the booking, only to find Vespera there, laughing with the coordinator, showing her my sketches and calling it our vision. Gideon was with her, his arm around her waist. I stood frozen in the doorway as she described their wedding. My cliffside altar, my white roses, my fairy lights. They'd been planning it for months, using my ideas, my savings, my dream. When I confronted them, Gideon wouldn't meet my eyes. Vespera just shrugged. "You were always so obsessed with this wedding, Eliza. I thought I'd do it better." I didn't cry. Not then. I walked away, my heart a fist of ice, and swore I'd make her pay. Not with screams or fists. Vespera would have loved the drama. No. My revenge would be surgical, precise, and it would hurt where she'd feel it most. Her heart. Thane was the key. I'd met him a few times at Vespera's parties, and he'd always been kind, asking about my sketches or the lighthouse's history. He wasn't like Gideon, who was steady but plain. Thane was a spark, someone who saw the world in angles and possibilities. Vespera didn't deserve him. She didn't even love him, not really. She loved the idea of him, the status, the way he made her look. I saw it in the way she'd flirt with others when he wasn't watching, the way she'd dismiss his dreams of building sustainable communities as cute hobbies. I started small. I ran into Thane by chance at the coffee shop he frequented, a cozy place called Driftwood Brew. I'd linger over my latte, sketching, knowing he'd notice. He did. "Eliza, those are incredible," he said one day, peering at my gown designs. "You've got a real gift." I smiled, modest, and let the conversation flow through art, architecture, and dreams. He was easy to talk to, and I could see why Vespera wanted him, but I also saw his frustration, the way his jaw tightened when he mentioned her spontaneity that left him waiting for hours, or her insistence on flashy designs that clashed with his values. I didn't rush. Revenge isn't a sprint, it's a chess game. Over weeks, I became his confidant. We'd meet for coffee, then walk along the beach, talking about everything but Vespera. I listened when he spoke about his work, his hope to build homes that harmonized with the coast. I shared my own dreams, not just of weddings, but of a life filled with beauty and purpose. He started looking at me differently, his eyes lingering a little longer, his smiles softer. I didn't push, I let him come to me. The turning point came at a gallery opening in town. Vespera was supposed to go with Thane, but bailed at the last minute for a better party. I went instead, wearing a dress I'd designed myself, a deep indigo number that hugged my curves and shimmered like the night sea. Thane couldn't take his eyes off me. We danced, laughed, and when he walked me home, he hesitated at my door. "Eliza," he said, voice low, "you make me feel seen." I didn't kiss him, not then. I just smiled and said, "Good night, Thane." Vespera's wedding was a spectacle. She walked down the aisle in a gown that was a poor copy of my sketches, under my fairy lights, with my roses. Gideon looked uncomfortable, like a man who'd realized too late he'd bet on the wrong horse. I didn't go. I didn't need to. I was at Thane's apartment, helping him pack. He'd broken up with Vespera the night before, after she'd laughed off his proposal to elope quietly, saying she needed a real wedding. He was done, and I was there, not as a rebound, but as someone who'd shown him what loyalty and shared dreams could look like. We didn't start dating right away. I wasn't cruel. I didn't want Thane to feel used. But when we did, it was real. We built a life together, one sketch, one blueprint at a time. Vespera's marriage to Gideon crumbled within a year. She couldn't handle his ordinariness, and he couldn't handle her chaos. Last I heard, she was back in Maris Cove, single, posting cryptic quotes about betrayal on social media. I don't hate her anymore. Hate takes too much energy, and I'm too busy living. Thane and I are designing a home by the cliffs, not far from where I once dreamed of my wedding. It's not the life I planned, but it's better because it's mine, earned through every calculated step. Vespera stole my dream, but I took something she'll never get back, the man who could have been her everything, if only she'd known how to hold on.